The old bus wheezed to a stop at the iron gates of the biggest house Maya had ever seen. She clutched her small suitcase tighter and took a deep breath. The morning air was crisp, and she could smell the roses that lined the long driveway. This was it. This was her chance to save everything. Maya stepped off the bus and looked up at the mansion in front of her. It was like something from a movie. Tall white columns stretched up to the sky, and windows sparkled in the sunlight like diamonds. The lawn was so green and perfect it looked fake. She had never seen grass cut so evenly or flowers planted in. Such neat rows. Her phone buzzed, a text from her mother. "How are you feeling, sweetheart? Don't worry about me. Just focus on your new job." Maya's heart squeezed tight. Her mother always tried to sound strong, but Maya knew better. The medical bills were piling up on their kitchen table back home. The treatment wasn't working as fast as the doctors hoped. And their savings account had exactly $43 left. That's why she was here. That's why she had answered the job posting for a live-in housekeeper. The pay was good, really good. Good enough to cover her mother's medicine and maybe even the surgery, the doctors mentioned. A woman in a crisp uniform appeared at the front door. She was older, maybe 50, with kind eyes and graying hair pulled back in a neat bun. "You must be Maya," the woman said, walking down the steps. "I'm Mrs. Chun, the head of staff here. Welcome to the Riverside estate." Maya had practiced her smile in the mirror that morning, but it still felt shaky. "Thank you for giving me this opportunity." Mrs. Chun studied her for a moment. "You look nervous, dear. That's normal. Working for Mr. Riverside can be challenging, but you seem like a smart girl. You'll figure it out." They walked through the front doors, and Maya almost gasped. The entrance hall was massive. A chandelier hung from the ceiling like a frozen waterfall, casting rainbows on the marble floor. Paintings in gold frames covered the walls. And there, in the center of it all, stood the most beautiful piano Maya had ever seen. It was a grand piano, black and shiny like a mirror. The lid was open, and she could see the strings inside catching the light. Her fingers twitched. Without her permission. She hadn't touched a piano in 2 years, not since she had to drop out of music school. "Beautiful, isn't it?" Mrs. Chin said, noticing where Maya was looking. "Mr. Riverside's grandmother was a pianist, though I've never seen him play it." Shame. Really, such a beautiful instrument just sitting there. Maya forced herself to look away. She wasn't here to think about music. She was here to work. Mrs. Chun showed her around the house. There were 12 bedrooms, 8 bathrooms, a library. That looked like something from a castle, and a kitchen bigger than Maya's entire apartment back home. Everything was spotless and expensive looking. "The rules are simple," Mrs. Chun explained as they walked. "Be on time, do your work well, and stay out of Mr. Riverside's way when he's home. He values his privacy and doesn't like to be disturbed." "What's he like?" Maya asked. Mrs. Chun paused at the top of a staircase. "He's particular. He expects things done a certain way. He doesn't have much patience for mistakes. But he pays well and on time, which is more than I can say for some rich folks I've worked for." They reached Maya's room on the 3rd floor. It was small but clean, with a single bed, a desk, and a window that looked out over the gardens. After sharing a tiny apartment with her mother and working 3 part-time jobs just to pay rent, this felt like luxury. "You start tomorrow at 6, Mrs. Chun said. "I'll show you your duties then. For now, get settled and rest up. Tomorrow will be a long day." After Mrs. Chun left, Maya sat on the bed and called her mother. "The house is incredible, Mom," she said, trying to sound excited instead of overwhelmed. "And my room has a view of the most amazing garden." "I'm so proud of you, sweetheart," her mother said, but her voice sounded tired. "You're doing something I could never do. Living with strangers, working in someone else's house. You're braver than I ever was." Maya wanted to tell her that she wasn't brave at all, that she was terrified, that she missed their little apartment with its creaky floors and the neighbor's dog that barked too much, that she missed her old life even though that life had been falling apart. Instead, she said, "I love you, Mom. Take your medicine and Rest, okay? That evening, Maya explored the house quietly. Most of the staff had gone home for the day, and the mansion felt empty and echoing. She found herself back in the main hall, standing in front of the piano again. She remembered the first time she had touched piano keys. She was 7 years old at her elementary school's music room. The teacher, Miss Rodriguez, had shown her how to find middle C. Maya's small fingers had pressed the key, and the sound had made something inside her chest light up like a candle. From that day on, music became her whole world. She practiced every chance she got. Her mother worked extra shifts to pay for lessons. Maya won competitions, got scholarships, and dreamed of playing in concert halls. Then her father got sick. Then he died. Then her mother got sick too. And dreams, Maya learned, don't pay for medicine or hospital bills. She reached out toward the piano keys, then pulled her hand back. This wasn't her piano. This wasn't her life anymore. Admiring the piano, Maya spun around, her heart jumping. Into her throat. A man stood in the doorway, tall and sharp-looking in an expensive suit. His dark hair was perfectly styled, and his eyes were cold as winter morning. This had to be Mr. Riverside. "I'm sorry," Maya stammered. I didn't mean to ... touch anything." He finished, walking into the room. His shoes clicked on the marble floor. "Good, because that piano is worth more than most people make in 5 years. I'd hate to see it damaged by careless hands." Maya's face burned with embarrassment. "Of course, sir. I understand." He studied her like she was something he might buy at a store. "You're the new maid." "Housekeeper," Maya corrected quietly, then immediately regretted it. His eyebrow rose slightly. "Excuse me?" "Nothing, sir." "Yes, I'm Maya. I start work tomorrow." "I have very high standards," he said, circling the piano slowly. "I don't tolerate mistakes or laziness. I don't want to see you, hear you, or think about you while you're working. Do you understand?" Maya nodded, not trusting her voice. "Good." He started to leave, then turned back. "And stay away from the piano. It's not a toy." After he left, Maya stood alone in the grand hall, feeling smaller than she ever had in her life. The beautiful house suddenly felt like a prison, and the piano looked like something from another world. A world where people like her didn't belong. She thought about her mother taking her medicine alone in their little apartment. She thought about the stack of bills on their kitchen table. She thought about the dreams she had given up. Tomorrow, she would start her new life as invisible help in a rich man's house. Tonight she would try not to cry. Maya's alarm buzzed at 5:30 in the morning. Her first week at the Riverside estate had taught her that being 5 minutes early was actually being on time. And being on time meant being late. Mr. Riverside didn't accept excuses. She dressed quickly in her uniform, a simple black dress with a white apron that Mrs. Chun had given her. In the mirror, she looked like someone from an old movie. Someone whose job was to be invisible. The kitchen was already busy when she arrived. Mrs. Chun was preparing breakfast, and 2 other housekeepers, Linda and Rosa, were organizing their cleaning supplies for the day. "Morning, Maya," Linda said with a tired smile. "Ready for another fun day in paradise?" Rosa elbowed her. "Don't be sarcastic." The girl's still learning, but Maya had already learned plenty in her first week. She had learned that Mr. Riverside liked his coffee at exactly 160 degrees. She had learned that he wanted his newspapers arranged in a specific order on his breakfast table. She had learned that he could find fault with anything if he was in the right mood. Yesterday, he had made her re-clean the guest bathroom 3 times because he found a single water spot on the mirror. The day before, he had thrown away the flowers she had arranged in the dining room, saying they looked amateur and cheap. "He's testing you," Mrs. Chun had explained. "All new staff go through this. He wants to see if you'll quit or if you'll stick around." Maya couldn't quit. Every paycheck was a lifeline for her mother. Every dollar meant her mother could keep taking the medicine that was slowly, hopefully, making her better. This morning's task was cleaning the main living area while Mr. Riverside had his breakfast. Maya gathered her supplies and headed to the grand room where the piano sat like a sleeping giant. She had learned to clean around it without really looking at it. Looking at it made her chest ache with memories of a life she used to have. A life where her biggest worry was whether she could master a difficult piece of music, not whether she could afford to keep her mother alive. Maya was dusting the bookshelf when she heard footsteps. Mr. Riverside entered the room, talking loudly on his phone. He didn't acknowledge her presence, which was normal. To him, she was furniture that happened to move and clean things. "The merger needs to happen by Friday," he was saying into his phone. "I don't care what their lawyers say. Find a way to make it work." Maya tried to dust quietly, but the feather duster knocked against a small vase. It wobbled, but didn't fall. Still, the tiny sound was enough to make Mr. Riverside look in her direction with irritation. He covered his phone. "Can you be more careful? Some of us are trying to work." "Sorry, sir," Maya whispered. After he left, Maya let out a breath she didn't realize she was holding. Every interaction with him felt like walking on ice. One wrong step, and she would fall through. The morning passed slowly. Maya cleaned windows until they sparkled, vacuumed carpets until every footprint disappeared, and polished furniture until she could see her reflection in the wood. Her back ached, and her hands were dry from the cleaning chemicals, but the work gave her something to focus on besides missing home. Around noon, Mrs. Chung found her in the library, carefully dusting each book. "You're doing good work," Mrs. Chung said quietly. "But I need to warn you about something. Mr. Riverside is having guests for dinner tonight. Important business people. When he has company, he gets extra particular about everything." Maya's stomach dropped. What should I do differently? Just stay extra alert, make sure everything is perfect. And whatever you do, don't spill anything or break anything when you're serving dinner. Last month, poor Jenny dropped the water glass and he made her pay for it out of her salary. That afternoon, Maya helped prepare for the dinner party. She polished silverware until her arms hurt, arranged flowers 3 different times until Mrs. Chun approved, and practiced walking with a tray so she wouldn't stumble. The guests arrived at 7. Maya watched from the kitchen window as expensive cars pulled up the driveway. Women in designer dresses and men in suits that probably cost more than Maya's annual salary stepped out like movie stars. "Time to serve the appetizers," Mrs. Chun announced. "Maya, you take the cheese and crackers. Linda, you've got the wine. Remember, be polite but quiet. Don't speak unless someone asks you a direct question." Maya balanced the silver tray carefully and walked toward the dining room. Through the doorway, she could hear laughter and conversation. The guests were talking about stock markets and vacation homes and charity galas. She entered the room and began serving, moving quietly around the table. The guests barely noticed her, which was exactly how it was supposed to be. She was background music in human form, but then she heard Mr. Riverside's voice cut through the conversation. "Of course, the help these days isn't what it used to be," he was saying, looking directly at Maya as she served crackers to a woman with diamond earrings. "You have to watch them constantly. They think they can just show up and collect a paycheck without actually working." Maya's face burned, but she kept her expression neutral. She had done nothing wrong. Her work had been perfect all week, despite his constant criticism. "I caught this one staring at my grandmother's piano on her first day," Mr. Riverside continued, gesturing toward Maya like she wasn't even human, probably wondering how much she could sell it for. The guests chuckled, and Maya felt something hot and angry rise in her chest. She wanted to tell them that she would never steal anything, that she knew more about that piano than Mr. Riverside ever would, that she had once played pieces so beautiful they made people cry. Instead, she finished serving and retreated to the kitchen, her hands shaking with humiliation. "Don't let him get to you," Rosa whispered when she saw Maya's face. "He does this to all of us. Makes us feel small so he can feel big." "But why?" Maya asked. "I've done everything he asked." "I've worked hard. Because he can," Linda said bitterly. "Because we need these jobs and he knows it. He thinks having money makes him better than us." Maya spent the rest of the evening serving courses and clearing plates, enduring more comments about the help and their supposed shortcomings. Each word felt like a small cut, and by the end of the night, she felt like she was bleeding from 1,000 tiny wounds.
After the guests left and the kitchen was cleaned,
Maya finally made it back to her room. She sat on her bed and called her. "Mother," trying to keep her voice steady. "How was your day, sweetheart?" Her mother asked. Maya looked out her window at the perfect gardens and the expensive cars still parked in the driveway. "It was fine, Mom, just learning the routine." She couldn't tell her mother about the humiliation. Couldn't admit that she was being treated like something less than human. Her mother would tell her to quit, to come home, and then what would happen to the medical bills? "I'm proud of you for sticking with it," her mother said. "I know it's not easy being away from home." After hanging up, Maya lay in her small bed and stared at the ceiling. She thought about the piano downstairs, sitting silent and beautiful in the empty hall. She thought about the way Mr. Riverside had talked about her like she was nothing. Tomorrow would bring more of the same. More cleaning, more criticism, more reminders that she was just hired help in a world where money decided your worth. But tomorrow would also bring another paycheck closer to helping her mother get better. Maya closed her eyes and tried to remember better days. Days when music filled her life instead of the sound of her own footsteps on marble floors, trying to be invisible in a house that felt more like a beautiful prison with each passing day. It was nearly midnight when Maya finally finished her work. The dinner party had been exhausting, and cleaning up afterwards had taken hours. Every glass had to be hand-washed and polished, every surface wiped down, every piece of silverware sorted and put away in exactly the right place. Mrs. Chun had gone home hours ago, and the other staff had finished their duties and retreated to their rooms. Maya should have been sleeping too, but she couldn't shake the feeling from earlier. The way Mr. Riverside had talked about her in front of his guests stung like a fresh wound. She walked through the quiet mansion, checking that all the lights were off and the doors were locked. This was part of her routine now, the final security check before bed. Her footsteps echoed softly on the marble floors, and moonlight streamed through the tall windows, painting everything in silver. When she reached the main hall, she stopped. There it was, the grand piano, looking almost magical in the moonlight. The black surface reflected the chandelier above like a dark mirror, and the ivory keys seemed to glow. Maya looked around the empty room. Mr. Riverside had left for a business trip that morning. He wouldn't be back until late tomorrow night. The house was completely quiet except for the soft ticking of the grandfather clock in the corner. She had been so careful for 3 weeks, so perfect and invisible and silent. She had swallowed every insult, cleaned every surface twice, and never complained about anything. She had been exactly what Mr. Riverside wanted, a person who wasn't really a person. But right now, in this moment, with no one watching and no one judging, she felt like herself again. Maya approached the piano slowly, like she was approaching a sleeping animal that might wake up and run away. She lifted the lid that covered the keys, and it opened without a sound. The keys were perfect, not a speck of dust on any of them. Someone had been taking care of this instrument, even if no one played it. She pressed middle C with one finger. The sound rang out pure and clear in the silent house, and Maya felt something inside her chest crack open. It had been so long since she had heard a piano note that wasn't just in her memory. She looked around again. Still alone. Still safe. Maya sat down on the piano bench and adjusted it to the right height. Her hands found their position on the keys, like they had never left. She started with scales, simple exercises that her first teacher had made her practice until she could play them in her sleep. The muscle memory was still there. Her fingers remembered where to go, how much pressure to use, how to make the keys sing instead of just making noise. It was like riding a bicycle or breathing, something so deep inside her that losing it would mean losing part of herself. After warming up with scales, Maya closed her eyes and let her fingers find the opening notes of Chopin's Nocturne in A-flat major. It was the first piece she had ever truly loved, the first piece that had made her cry when she heard it. Played by a master, the melody flowed from her fingers like water from a spring, soft and gentle at first, then growing stronger and more confident. She had performed this piece in competitions, in recitals, in her dreams during the worst nights when she missed music so much it hurt to breathe. As she played, Everything else disappeared. The uniform she wore, the cleaning supplies that had left her hands rough, the memory of being talked about like she wasn't human, none of it mattered. There was only the music and the feeling of coming home to herself. She moved from the nocturne into Bach's prelude in C major, her fingers dancing across the keys with growing confidence. Then Debussy's Clair de Lune, which had always reminded her of moonlight on water. The notes filled the grand hall, bringing life to a space that had felt cold and empty for so long. Maya lost track of time. She played pieces she had memorized years ago, pieces that had lived in her heart even when she couldn't touch a piano. Her mother's favorite lullaby, the song that had made her fall in love with music when she was 7, the complex sonata she had been working on when she had to quit school. Each piece felt like finding a lost part of herself. She had forgotten how music could make her feel powerful and peaceful at the same time, how it could take all the broken pieces inside her and arrange them into something beautiful. She was deep into Rachmaninoff's Piano Concerto No. 2 when she heard a sound that made her heart stop. The front door closing. Footsteps in the entrance hall. Maya's hands froze on the keys. Mr. Riverside wasn't supposed to be back until tomorrow night. Had he come home early? Had someone broken in? She sat perfectly still, barely breathing, hoping whoever it was would go upstairs without coming into the main hall. The footsteps got closer. Maya wanted to run, but there was nowhere to go. She was trapped at the piano like a thief caught with stolen goods. Her mind raced through excuses, explanations, apologies. But how could she explain this? How could she make him understand that touching the piano wasn't about disrespecting his rules, it was about remembering who she used to be? The footsteps stopped right outside the main hall. Maya could see a shadow in the doorway, but she couldn't tell who it was. She kept her eyes on the piano keys, too scared to look up. "Don't stop," said a quiet voice. Maya's head snapped up. Mr. Riverside stood in the doorway, but he looked different somehow. His expensive suit was wrinkled from traveling, his hair wasn't perfectly styled, and his expression wasn't angry. He looked surprised, maybe even confused. "I said don't stop," he repeated, stepping into the room. "Keep playing." Maya's voice came out as barely a whisper. "Sir, I'm so sorry. I know I shouldn't have touched it. I was just... How long have you been playing piano?" He interrupted. The question caught her off guard. She had expected anger, shouting, maybe even being fired on the spot. She hadn't expected curiosity. "Since I was 7, she said honestly. 15 years. Where did you learn?" Maya's hands were still resting on the keys, and she could feel them trembling. "At school first, then private lessons. I was studying at the Riverside Conservatory before..." She trailed off, realizing she had just told him she had studied at a school that probably cost more per semester than most people made in a year. His eyebrows went up. "The conservatory? That's not easy to get into." "I had a scholarship," Maya said quickly. "A full scholarship. I didn't pay anything. What happened? Why aren't you there now?" The question was gentle, not demanding. Maya looked at his face, trying to figure out if this was some kind of trap. But his expression seemed genuinely curious. "My father died," she said simply. "Then my mother got sick. I had to drop out to work and take care of her." Mr. Riverside was quiet for a long moment. He walked closer to the piano, his footsteps soft on the marble floor. "Play something else," he said finally. "Sir? Play something else. Something you love." Maya stared at him, not understanding what was happening. This was the same man who had humiliated her in front of his guests, the same man who treated her like she was invisible. But right now, he was asking her to play music. She turned back to the piano and chose carefully. She played the last piece her father had loved, a gentle, melancholy song that always made her think of him. As the music filled the room, she forgot about Mr. Riverside standing behind her. She forgot about being afraid. She just played, letting the music say everything she couldn't put into words about loss and hope and the strange turns life could take. When the last note faded away, the silence felt different than before. It felt full instead of empty. "That was beautiful, Mr. Riverside," said quietly. Maya turned around on the piano bench, still not quite believing this was real. I should get back to my room, she said. I have work in the morning. But as she stood up, something had changed between them. The music had created a crack in the wall that separated employer from employee, rich from poor, powerful from powerless. And through that crack, for just a moment, they had seen each other as two human beings who both understood the language of beautiful things. The next morning felt different. Maya woke up wondering if the night before had been a dream. Had Mr. Riverside really asked her to play? Had he really listened to her music without getting angry? In the bright morning light, it seemed impossible, but when she went downstairs to start her duties, she found a small note on the kitchen counter with her name on it. Inside, in Mr. Riverside's neat handwriting, were just 3 words. Thank you. R. Maya stared at the note, her heart doing strange things in her chest. Mrs. Chun bustled around the kitchen, preparing breakfast as usual, but she kept glancing at Maya with curious eyes. You look different today, Mrs. Chun said finally. Did something happen? Maya folded the note carefully and put it in her pocket. Nothing happened, just a good night's sleep. She wasn't ready to talk about it yet. Wasn't ready to explain that for 20 minutes last night she had felt like herself again. That for 20 minutes the man who employed her had seen her as more than just hired help. The day passed normally. Mr. Riverside went to his office and made phone calls. Maya cleaned and organized and tried not to think about piano keys under her fingers. When their paths crossed in the hallway, he nodded politely, but there was something different in his eyes. Something that hadn't been there before that afternoon. Mrs. Chun approached Maya while she was dusting the library. Mr. Riverside wants to see you in his study, she said. Don't look so worried. You're not in trouble. He just said he needs to discuss something with you. Maya's stomach flipped. Maybe he had changed his mind about last night. Maybe he was going to fire her after all. She smoothed her apron and knocked on the study door. Come in, his voice called. The study was all dark wood and leather chairs. With books lining every wall, Mr. Riverside sat behind a massive desk, but he stood when she entered. Maya, please sit down. She perched on the edge of a leather chair, her back straight and hands folded. I've been thinking about last night, he said, about your music. You're very talented. Thank you, sir. I'm having a dinner party tomorrow. Evening. Some business associates and their wives? Important people. He paused, studying her face. I'd like you to play for them. Maya felt the blood drain from her face. Sir? During dinner, just a few pieces, background music while we eat. I don't think that's a good idea, sir. I'm just the housekeeper. Your guests might think it's strange. Mr. Riverside's expression hardened slightly. I wasn't asking your opinion. I was telling you what I'd like you to do. The familiar tone was back, the one that reminded Maya exactly where she stood in this house. But something about this felt wrong. Why would he want her to play for his guests when he usually tried to keep her invisible? Of course, sir, she said quietly. Whatever you need. Good, wear something appropriate, not your uniform. After she left his study, Maya felt sick to her stomach. She found Mrs. Chun in the laundry room and told her what had happened. Mrs. Chun frowned. That's odd. He's never asked any of the staff to perform before. Are you sure you want to do this? Do I have a choice? There's always a choice, dear. But I understand why you feel like there isn't. That evening, Maya called her mother as usual, but she couldn't bring herself to mention the dinner party or the piano playing. Instead, she listened to her mother talk about her doctor's visit and the new medication that seemed to be helping. You sound tired, sweetheart, her mother said. Are you taking care of yourself? I'm fine, Mom. Just working hard. Don't work too hard. Money isn't worth your health or happiness. But Maya thought about the medical bills and the rent on their apartment back home. Money might not be worth everything, but right now, it was worth a lot. The next day dragged by slowly. Maya went through her cleaning routine, but her mind kept drifting to the evening ahead. What pieces should she play? What should she wear? Why did Mr. Riverside want her to perform for his guests? Around noon, Linda found her organizing the linen Closet, I heard about tonight, Linda said quietly. Be careful, Maya. What do you mean? I mean, rich people sometimes like to show off their possessions, their cars, their art, their houses, their staff. Maya felt a chill run down her spine. You think he's showing me off? I think he's a complicated man who doesn't always think about how his actions affect other people. Just be ready for anything. As evening approached, Maya's nervousness grew. She had found a simple black dress in her closet, nothing fancy, but nicer than her uniform. Her hands were shaking as she got ready. The guests began arriving at 7. Maya watched from her window as expensive cars pulled up the driveway. She recognized some faces from the previous dinner party, the woman with diamond earrings, the man with the loud laugh who had seemed to enjoy Mr. Riverside's comments about the help. At 7:30, Mrs. Chun knocked on her door. It's time, she said gently. You'll do fine. Just remember, you're incredibly talented. Don't let anyone make you forget that. Maya walked downstairs on unsteady legs. The guests were already seated in the dining room, chatting and laughing over wine and appetizers. She could hear Mr. Riverside's voice above the others. Charming and confident, she stood outside the dining room door, gathering her courage. Through the crack she could see the piano in the main hall, waiting for her. It looked different now, not like a beautiful object she wasn't allowed to touch, but like an old friend. Taking a deep breath, Maya pushed open the door and stepped into the dining room. The conversation continued for a moment before people began to notice her. Mr. Riverside stood up, a smile on his face that didn't quite reach his eyes. Ladies and gentlemen, he said, his voice carrying across the room, I have a special treat for you this evening. Our housekeeper Maya is going to provide some entertainment for us. The word entertainment hit Mia like a slap. The way he said it, the way some of the guests were already smiling with anticipation. This wasn't about sharing her music. This was about something else entirely. How delightful, said the woman with diamond earrings. How unusual. Yes, agreed the man with the loud laugh. I've never had the help perform before. What an interesting idea. Maya felt her cheeks burn. The way they were looking at her like she was a circus act, something amusing to watch while they ate their expensive food. She glanced at Mr. Riverside, hoping to see some sign that she had misunderstood. But his expression was unreadable. Maya is quite talented, he continued. She studied at the Riverside Conservatory on scholarship. Before life got in the way? Some of the guests murmured with interest, but Maya could hear the condescension in their voices. The unspoken words hung in the air. How charming that the poor girl had dreams above her station. Well, we're waiting, said a woman in a red dress. Don't be shy, dear. Maya stood frozen for a moment. Every instinct told her to run, to refuse, to protect herself from whatever was about to happen. But she thought about her mother's medicine and the bills waiting at home. She thought about the job she couldn't afford to lose. Of course, she said quietly, I'll play for you. As she walked toward the piano, she heard whispered conversations behind her. Someone mentioned how quaint it was. Someone else wondered if she would actually be any good. Maya sat down at the piano bench and placed her hands on the keys. This was it. In a few moments, she would either prove herself or become a laughingstock. She would either share her gift or have it turned into a joke for people who saw her as nothing more than hired help. Maya closed her eyes and chose her first piece. Whatever happened next, she would play with everything she had. Not for them, but for herself. For the girl who had once dreamed of concert halls and standing ovations. For the music that lived in her heart, no matter what anyone else thought of it. The first notes rang out into the room, and May began to play her heart out for an audience that had no idea they were about to witness something extraordinary. Maya's hands trembled as she placed them on the piano keys. Behind her, she could hear the guests settling back into their chairs, wine glasses clinking, quiet laughter bubbling up from conversations. They were treating this like dinner theater. Entertainment to go with their expensive meal. The woman in the red dress leaned forward with a smirk. I do hope she knows something we can actually recognize. Not too classical, dear. something light and cheerful. Maya's stomach twisted. She had planned to open with Chopin's Nocturne, the piece that had made her fall in love with piano all those years ago. But now she hesitated. Maybe she should play something simple, something that wouldn't draw too much attention. Maybe she should just get through this without embarrassing herself. "Any day now," called out the man with the loud laugh. "We're quite hungry," more chuckles from around the table. Maya felt heat rise in her cheeks. She glanced back at Mr. Riverside, who was watching her with an unreadable expression. For a moment she thought she saw something like regret in his eyes. But then he looked away, taking a sip of his wine. Maya turned back to the piano. Her reflection stared back at her from the polished black surface, a young woman in a simple dress, hands poised over keys that cost more than most people's cars. She looked small and out of place. Then she remembered her father's words from years ago, spoken during her first recital when she was 12 and terrified. "Music isn't about them, Maya. It's about you and the story you want to tell. Let everything else disappear." Maya closed her eyes and let her fingers find the opening notes of Chopin's Nocturne in E-flat major. The melody began softly, almost hesitantly, like a whisper in the dark. Behind her, the dinner conversation continued at first, forks clinking against plates, someone asking for the salt, a woman commenting on the wine. But as Maya's fingers gained confidence, something magical began to happen. The notes flowed from the piano like water finding its way down a mountainside. Natural, unstoppable, pure. Her left hand created a gentle foundation while her right hand sang the melody that had lived in her heart for so many years. The dinner conversation began to fade. First one voice, then another, until the only sound in the room was music. Maya felt the familiar transformation happening, the one where she stopped being nervous. Maya, the housekeeper, and became Maya, the musician. Her shoulders relaxed, her breathing deepened, and her hands moved across the keys like they were dancing. She played the first piece with everything she had learned in 15 years of lessons and practice and dreams. Every dynamic change was perfect, every phrase shaped with the kind of musical intelligence that couldn't be taught, only born from deep understanding and love for the art. When the last note of the nocturne faded away, the silence that followed was different from the one that had started the evening. It wasn't the silence of people waiting for entertainment. It was the silence of people who had just heard something they didn't expect. "My goodness," whispered the woman with diamond earrings. But Maya wasn't finished. Without pausing, she moved into Bach's Prelude in C major. Her fingers flew across the keys with precision that came from years of disciplined practice. The mathematical beauty of Bach filled the room, complex but somehow perfectly logical, like watching the stars arrange themselves in patterns across the night sky. Some of the guests had stopped eating entirely now. Forks sat abandoned on plates as people turned in their chairs to get a better view of the piano. Maya could feel their attention, but it felt different now. Not like people watching a circus act, but like people witnessing something real. Mr. Riverside had gone completely still. His wine glass sat untouched in his hand, and his eyes were fixed on Maya with an expression she had never seen before. The cold businessman who had treated her like furniture was gone, replaced by someone who looked almost amazed. For her third piece, Maya chose Debussy's Clair de Lune. It was a risk. The piece required not just technical skill, but deep emotional understanding. It was the kind of music that revealed everything about the person playing it. But Maya was past caring about risks now. She was lost in the joy of making music again. The opening notes painted moonlight across water, soft and shimmering. Maya's touch was so delicate that each note seemed to float in the air before fading away. She built the piece slowly, letting the emotion grow naturally, never forcing anything. When she reached the climactic section, her whole body moved with the music, swaying gently as her hands created waves of sound that filled every corner of the room. A woman at the far end of the table was crying. Actually crying, tears running down her cheeks as she listened. The man with the loud laugh sat with his mouth slightly open, his usual confidence replaced by something like wonder. Maya finished. Claire de Lune and immediately flowed into her final piece, Rachmaninoff's Piano Concerto No. 2, arranged for solo. Piano. It was the most technically demanding piece she knew, requiring strength and delicacy, power and subtlety, all at the same time. Her hands stretched across the keyboard, reaching for notes that seemed impossible to play. The music was passionate and heartbreaking, full of longing and triumph and everything Maya had felt in the past 3 years of loss and struggle and hope. She played like her life depended on it because in a way it did. The concerto told the story of someone fighting against overwhelming odds, someone who refused to give up even when everything seemed lost. As Maya played, she felt like she was playing her own story, the scholarship girl who had lost everything but hadn't lost her music. The daughter who cleaned toilets and scrubbed floors to save her mother's life. The dreamer who had been forced to grow up too fast but still believed in beautiful things. When she reached the final section, Maya's playing became transcendent. She wasn't just pressing keys anymore, she was channeling pure emotion through her fingers. The music soared and crashed and soared again, filling the mansion with sounds so powerful that it seemed to shake the walls themselves. The last chord rang out like a battle cry, then faded slowly into silence. Maya sat at the piano bench, breathing hard. Her hands were still on the keys, and she could feel her heart pounding against her ribs. For a moment, she had forgotten where she was, forgotten about the guests and the job and everything except the music. Then reality came rushing back. She turned around slowly, expecting to see polite applause and forced smiles. Instead, she saw something she had never expected. Every single person in the room was staring at her with genuine awe. The woman who had been crying was still wiping her eyes. The man with the loud laugh looked like someone had just told him the earth was actually flat. Even the snobbish woman in the red dress sat with her mouth slightly open, apparently too shocked to speak, but it was Mr. Riverside's face that caught Maya's attention. He looked like someone who had just discovered that his housekeeper was actually a famous artist in disguise. His usual cold confidence was completely gone, replaced by something that looked almost like shame. The silence stretched on, for what felt like hours but was probably only seconds. Maya didn't know what to do. Should she say something? Should she leave? Should she apologize for playing pieces that were too complicated? Finally, the woman with diamond earrings began to clap. Slowly at first, then faster, then with real enthusiasm. One by one, the other guests joined in. Soon, the entire room was applauding, not the polite, restrained applause of people who felt obligated to clap, but the kind of enthusiastic appreciation usually reserved for concert halls. "That was absolutely magnificent," said the woman with diamond earrings, standing up from her chair. "I haven't heard playing like that since the last time I attended the symphony." "Where did you train?" asked another guest. "That was professional. Level better than professional." Maya stood up from the piano bench on shaky legs. "Thank you," she managed to say. "Thank you very much." But as the guests continued to praise her performance, Maya realized something had fundamentally changed in the room. She was no longer the entertainment. She was no longer the help who had been asked to perform tricks for rich people's amusement. She was the most talented person in the room, and everyone knew it. The applause seemed to go on forever. Maya stood beside the piano, still trying to process what had just happened. Her heart was racing, not from nerves anymore, but from the pure joy of having played music again, really played the way she was meant to. The woman with diamond earrings approached her first, her eyes bright with excitement. "My dear, that was absolutely extraordinary," she said, reaching out to shake Maya's hand. "I'm Dr. Patricia Wilson. I sit on the board of the Metropolitan Symphony Orchestra." "Where on earth have you been hiding?" Maya blinked in surprise. I'm sorry, what?" "That performance was world-class. Professional level. I've heard trained musicians with decades of experience who couldn't play Rachmaninoff with half that passion." Dr. Wilson's voice was filled with genuine admiration. "You said you studied at the Riverside Conservatory?" "Yes, but I didn't finish. I had to leave after 2 years." 2 years? A tall man with silver hair joined their conversation. "I'm Professor James Carter from the Eastwood Music Academy. If you can play like that with only 2 years of formal conservatory training, you're either lying about your background or you're some kind of musical genius. Maya felt overwhelmed. These people weren't talking to her like she was a housekeeper anymore. They were talking to her like she was their equal, maybe even their superior when it came to music. "I'm not lying," Maya said quietly. "I had good teachers before the conservatory, and I practiced a lot. 6 hours a day, sometimes more. 6 hours a day." Dr. Wilson's eyebrows shot up. "While working to support yourself?" "While going to school and working part-time jobs, yes." More guests had gathered around them now, listening to the conversation with fascination. The woman in the red dress, who had been so dismissive earlier, looked embarrassed and stayed at the back of the group. "Tell us what happened," said Professor Carter gently. "Why did you leave the conservatory?" Maya glanced toward Mr. Riverside, who was still sitting at the dinner table, watching the scene unfold with a strange expression on his face. She wasn't sure if she should tell these people her personal story. "It's okay," Dr. Wilson encouraged. "We're all music lovers here. We understand how precious talent like yours is." Maya took a deep breath. "My father died during my second year. He had been sick for a while, and the medical bills were enormous. My mother got sick too, right after he passed. I had to drop out to work full-time and take care of her." The room had gone quiet. Everyone was listening now, even the guests who had gone back to their dinner. "What kind of work?" asked Professor Carter. "Whatever I could find. Waitressing, cleaning houses, babysitting. I was working 3 jobs while my mother went through treatment." Maya's voice got stronger as she continued. "I couldn't afford to keep my apartment near the conservatory, so I moved back home. There wasn't money for lessons anymore or practice rooms. I hadn't touched a piano in 2 years until a few weeks ago." "2 years?" Dr. Wilson looked shocked. "You haven't played piano in 2 years and you just performed like that?" "Music doesn't leave you," Maya said simply. "Even when you can't practice it, it stays inside you." A younger woman stepped forward. Maya recognized her as the wife of one of Mr. Riverside's business partners. "I'm Anna Chun," she said. "I run a non-profit foundation that provides scholarships for talented musicians from low-income families." "What you just described, having to choose between your dreams and your family's survival, that's exactly why our foundation exists." Maya felt tears prick at her eyes. These people understood. They knew what it meant to love music so much that losing it felt like losing part of your soul. "How is your mother now?" asked Dr. Wilson kindly. "She's getting better. The new treatment is working, but it's expensive. That's why I'm working here. Mr. Riverside pays well enough that I can cover her medical costs and our rent." For the first time since the conversation started, people looked over at Mr. Riverside. He was still sitting at his place at the head of the table, but his face had gone pale. He looked like someone who had just realized he had been very, very wrong about something important. Professor Carter turned to Mr. Riverside with barely concealed disapproval. "You've had this level of talent working in your house as a housekeeper, and you made her perform for us like some kind of parlor trick?" Mr. Riverside's jaw tightened, but he didn't respond. "Richard," Dr. Wilson said sharply, using his first name in a way that suggested they knew each other well, "what were you thinking? This young woman is one of the most gifted pianists I've heard in years. She should be on stage at Carnegie Hall, not scrubbing your floors." I didn't know," Mr. Riverside said quietly. "You didn't know because you didn't bother to ask," Professor Carter shot back. "You saw a young woman who needed work and decided she must be nothing more than hired help." The tension in the room was thick. Maya felt uncomfortable being the center of this conflict, but she also felt something she hadn't experienced in a long time. People were defending her. People were angry on her behalf. Anna Chun stepped closer to Maya. "Would you be interested in auditioning for our foundation? We provide full scholarships to return to conservatory, plus living expenses and support for family medical costs." Maya's heart stopped. "Are you serious?" "Completely serious. What I heard tonight tells me you have the kind of talent that comes along maybe once in a generation." You shouldn't be wasting it because the world isn't fair. But I'd need to audition against other people. People who have been practicing the whole time I've been away. Dear, Dr. Wilson said with a smile, if you can play like that after 2 years away from the piano, I think you'll do just fine in any audition. Professor Carter pulled out his phone. I'm going to make some calls tomorrow. There are people who need to hear about you. Scholarship committees, talent scouts, maybe even some recording industry contacts. Maya felt dizzy. An hour ago, she had been the hired help performing for people's amusement. Now these same people were talking about scholarships and auditions and recording contracts. I don't understand, she said. Why are you all being so kind to me? Because talent like yours is rare and precious, Anna-chan said. And because anyone who can overcome what you've overcome while maintaining that level of artistic ability deserves every opportunity we can give them. Dr. Wilson nodded. Music is a gift, but it's also a responsibility. When someone has been blessed with abilities like yours, it's the rest of our job to make sure those abilities don't go to waste because of circumstances beyond their control. Maya looked around the room at all these successful, wealthy people who were suddenly treating her like someone important. It felt surreal. There's just one thing, she said hesitantly. I can't leave my job right now. My mother still needs the insurance, and I have to keep making money for her treatment. That's exactly what foundation scholarships are for, Anna. Shun said, we cover everything, tuition, living expenses, medical costs for family members. You wouldn't have to choose between your music and your mother's health. For the first time in 3 years, Maya felt hope blooming in her chest like a flower opening to sunlight. Maybe her dreams weren't dead after all. Maybe there was still a chance for the life she had thought was lost forever. She glanced over at Mr. Riverside one more time. He was staring at his wine glass, and for a moment he looked smaller than she had ever seen him, like a man who had just discovered that his actions had consequences he never considered. The evening that had started as humiliation was turning into the most important night of Maya's life, and it was all because she had decided to play her music with honesty instead of hiding her talent to make other people comfortable. The guests didn't leave until nearly midnight. Maya spent hours talking with them, exchanging contact information, and listening to stories about the music world she had been forced to leave behind. Dr. Wilson gave her a business card with 3 different phone numbers. Professor Carter promised to send her information about upcoming auditions. Anushen took down all of Maya's details for the scholarship foundation. It felt like a dream that Maya was afraid to wake up from when the last car finally pulled out of the driveway. The mansion fell quiet. Maya stood in the main hall, still, wearing her black dress, looking at the pile of business cards in her hands. Each one represented a door that had been closed for 3 years suddenly swinging open again. She heard footsteps behind her and turned around. Mr. Riverside stood in the doorway, still in his dinner suit but with his tie loosened and his hair slightly messed up. He looked tired, but more than that, he looked troubled. Maya, he said quietly, could we talk? She nodded, though her stomach fluttered with nervousness. The evening had been magical, but she still worked for this man. She still needed this job until something else came through. Sit down, please, he said. Gesturing toward the chairs near the piano, Maya perched on the edge of a velvet chair, the business card still clutched in her hands. Mr. Riverside sat across from her, leaning forward with his elbows on his knees. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. I owe you an apology, he said finally. Maya blinked in surprise. In all the weeks she had worked here, she had never heard him apologize to anyone for anything. You don't need to, she started. Yes, I do. His voice was firm but not harsh. I treated you terribly tonight. I put you in an impossible position, and expected you to be grateful for it. Maya didn't know what to say. She had expected anger, maybe even being fired for embarrassing him in front of his guests. She hadn't expected this. When I asked you to play tonight, he continued, I thought I was giving you a chance to show off a little hobby. I thought maybe you could play Happy Birthday or something simple that would amuse my guests. He ran his hands through his hair. I had no idea what you were capable of. You couldn't have known, Maya said softly. But I should have asked. I should have cared enough to find out who you really are. His eyes met hers, and she saw something in them she had never seen before, genuine regret. Instead, I treated you like you were less than human, like you were just furniture that could clean things. Maya felt her throat tighten. Hearing him say it out loud made it real in a way that hurt. I've been thinking about what Dr. Wilson said, he continued, about how I had this incredible talent working in my house and I never bothered to see it. But it's worse than that, isn't it? I didn't just ignore your talent, I actively tried to make you feel small. Maya remembered the dinner party where he had talked about her like she wasn't even in the room. The way he had made her re-clean things that were already perfect. The cold dismissal in his voice whenever he spoke to her. Why? She asked quietly. Mister. Riverside was quiet for so long that Maya wondered if he was going to answer at all. My grandmother, he said finally. She was the one who played that piano. She taught me when I was little, but I quit when I was 12. Said it was boring, said I had better things to do. He looked at the piano with sadness in his eyes. She died when I was in college. Left me this house, all her money, everything. But I never touched the piano again after she was gone. Maya waited for him to continue. Seeing you look at it that first day, seeing the way you, I don't know, it reminded me of her. And it reminded me of how I threw away something she loved, because I was too arrogant to appreciate it. His voice got quieter. I think I resented you for caring about something I had never learned to value. That's not my fault, Maya said, finding her voice. No, it's not. It's mine. He looked at her directly. I've spent my whole life inheriting things I didn't earn and looking down on people who actually work for what they have. Tonight, those people made it very clear what they think of that attitude. Maya remembered Professor Carter's sharp words and Dr. Wilson's disapproving tone when they realized how Mr. Riverside had been treating her. I don't expect you to forgive me, he said. I just wanted you to know that I understand what I did. Wrong, Maya studied his face. He looked different somehow, less polished, more human. Like the armor of wealth and privilege had cracked open to show the person underneath. Can I ask you something? She said. He nodded. That night when you caught me playing and you asked me to keep going, was that real? Or were you already planning to make me perform for your guests? Mr. Riverside's face flushed with embarrassment. It was real, completely real. I had never heard anything like that in this house before. It was... He searched for words. It was like the house came alive. Then what changed? I got scared, he admitted. I spent the next day thinking about how you had made me feel. Like maybe I wasn't as important or impressive as I thought I was? Like maybe a housekeeper could be more talented and valuable than the person writing her paychecks. He shook his head. So I decided to put you back in what I thought was your place. Maya felt a mix of sadness and anger. By humiliating me in front of your friends. By showing them that no matter how talented you were still just the help. His voice was thick with shame. It was cruel and petty and small, and it backfired completely. Maya looked down at the business cards in her hands. In trying to diminish her, he had accidentally given her the opportunity of a lifetime. What happens now? She asked. Now you follow up on those opportunities, he said without hesitation. You audition for those scholarships. You get back to the conservatory where you belong. But my job here will be here if you need it, he interrupted. But Maya, after tonight, I think we both know you're meant for bigger things than cleaning my house. Maya felt tears threatening again. For 3 years, she had felt trapped by circumstances, forced to choose between her dreams and her family's. Survival. Tonight, for the first time, it seemed like maybe she could have both. There's something else, Mr. Riverside said, reaching into his jacket pocket. He pulled out a folded piece of paper and handed it to her. Maya opened it and gasped. It was a check made out to her for more money than she had ever seen in one place. What is this for? Your mother's medical bills, all of them. He leaned back in his chair. I made some calls while you were talking with the guests. Your mother's treatment is now fully covered, including any future care she might need. Maya stared at the check, unable to speak. It's not charity, he said quickly. It's an apology. A very inadequate apology for treating someone with your talent and character the way I treated you. I can't accept this, Maya whispered. Yes, you can. Because it means you can focus on your music without worrying about anything else. You can audition for those scholarships knowing that your mother is taken care of either way. Maya looked up at him, tears finally spilling over. Why are you doing this? Mr. Riverside smiled sadly. Because maybe it's time I tried to earn some of the good things in my life instead of just inheriting them. And because my grandmother would have loved your playing. She would have wanted me to help you the way someone should have helped her when she was young and struggling. For the first time since she had arrived at the mansion, Maya saw Mr. Riverside not as her intimidating employer, but as a person capable of growth and genuine kindness. It didn't erase the hurt he had caused, but it offered something she hadn't expected, hope for who he might become. 6 months later, Maya stood backstage at the Riverside Concert Hall, her hands shaking as she adjusted her long black performance dress. Through a crack in the curtain, she could see the audience filling the seats, hundreds of people coming. To hear her play in her first public recital in 3 years, her phone buzzed with a text from her mother, watching the live stream from home. So proud of you, sweetheart. Dad would be too. Maya smiled, feeling tears threaten to mess up her carefully applied makeup. Her mother was healthy now, gaining weight and strength every day. The new treatment had worked better than anyone had dared to hope, and the stress of medical bills was finally gone. Dr. Wilson appeared at her elbow, elegant in a navy blue dress. How are you feeling? Terrified, Maya admitted, but also excited. Good, that's exactly how you should feel before a performance this important. The scholarship audition had gone better than Maya's wildest dreams. Not only had Anna Chun's foundation accepted her, but they had fast-tracked her return to the conservatory and arranged for this debut recital. Professor Carter had been right. The music world was hungry for new talent, and Maya's story of perseverance had captured people's imagination. Is he here? Maya asked, trying to sound casual. Dr. Wilson smiled knowingly. Front row, center seat. He's been there for an hour, looking more nervous than you do. Maya peeked through the curtain again and spotted Mr. Riverside in the audience. He was wearing a black suit and kept checking his watch, his leg bouncing with anxiety. Next to him sat Mrs. Chun, Linda, and Rosa, all the staff from the mansion, dressed in their finest clothes and beaming with pride. The past 6 months had brought changes Maya never could have imagined. After that transformative dinner party, Mr. Riverside had become a completely different person. Not just toward her, but toward everyone who worked for him. He had started learning his employees' names. He had given everyone raises and better benefits. He had converted one of the mansion's unused rooms into a break room where staff could relax during their shifts. Most surprising of all, he had started taking piano lessons from a teacher Maya had recommended. I'm not trying to become a concert pianist, he had explained to Maya during one of their weekly conversations over coffee. I just want to understand what my grandmother tried to teach me, what you tried to show me that night. Maya had continued working at the mansion part-time while she prepared for her return to school, but the job felt completely different now. Mr. Riverside treated her with respect and genuine interest in her progress. He asked about her lessons, her auditions, her dreams for the future. Sometimes she caught him listening when she practiced on the piano during her breaks. 5 minutes, called the stage manager. Maya's stomach did a flip. She closed her eyes and took deep breaths, remembering everything her new teacher had told her about performance nerves. Maya. She turned to see Mr. Riverside approaching backstage, looking slightly out of place among the musicians and technicians. You came back here? She said, surprised. I wanted to give you this before you went on. He held out a small wrapped box. It was my grandmother's. I think she would have wanted you to have it. Maya opened the box and gasped. Inside was a delicate silver bracelet with tiny musical notes carved into the metal. It was beautiful and obviously old, worn smooth by years of wear. I can't accept this, Maya said, though her heart was racing. It's too precious. She wore it to every performance she ever gave, Mr. Riverside said gently. She believed it brought her luck. I want you to have that luck tonight. Maya let him fasten the bracelet around her wrist. The metal felt warm against her skin, like it carried the memory of all the music that had come before. "Thank you," she whispered. "No, thank you," he said seriously, "for showing me that treating people with kindness costs nothing but gives you everything." The stage manager called, "Places," and Maya felt her heart rate spike. "You're going to be magnificent," Mr. Riverside said. "Just remember, play for yourself first. The audience will follow." Maya nodded, remembering her father's similar words from years ago. Some truths never changed. She walked to the wings of the stage, her feet steady despite her racing heart. Through the curtain, she could hear the audience settling in, the rustle of programs, the excited murmur of conversation. Dr. Wilson took the microphone to introduce her. "Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome a young artist whose journey back to music reminds us all why art matters, why dreams are worth fighting for, and why talent combined with determination can overcome any obstacle. Please give a warm welcome, Tio Maya Rodriguez." The curtain rose and Maya walked onto the stage. The lights were bright and warm, and she could see faces in the audience, but not clearly enough to be distracted by them. The piano waited for her in the center of the stage like an old friend. She sat down at the bench and adjusted it to the perfect height. The concert hall was completely silent, that special kind of silence that happens when hundreds of people are all focused on the same thing. Maya placed her hands on the keys and took one final deep breath. Then she began to play. She opened with the same piece that had started everything, Chopin's Nocturne in E-flat major. But this time, she wasn't playing for people who saw her as entertainment. She wasn't playing to prove anything or to escape anything. She was playing because this was who she was meant to be. The music flowed from her fingers, like a river returning to its proper channel. Every note was exactly where it belonged, every phrase shaped with the kind of musical intelligence that came from years of struggle and growth. And finally, finding her way home, she moved through her program with confidence and joy. Bach's Prelude, Debussy's Clair de Lune, and finally, the Rachmaninoff concerto that had stunned Mr. Riverside's dinner guests. But tonight, the music felt different. It felt like freedom when she finished the final piece. The silence lasted for a heartbeat before the audience erupted in applause. People stood up, clapping and cheering with genuine enthusiasm. Maya stood and bowed, tears streaming down her face. Through the lights, she could see Mr. Riverside in the front row, applauding as enthusiastically as everyone else. But more than that, she could see something in his face that she had never seen before, pure, uncomplicated joy in someone else's success. After the concert, at the reception in the lobby, Maya was surrounded by well-wishers and music industry. Professionals, record labels were interested. Concert series wanted to book her. The music world that had seemed so far away was suddenly welcoming her back with open arms. But the moment that meant the most came when Mr. Riverside approached her near the end of the evening. "That was extraordinary," he said simply. "Thank you for everything, for the opportunity, for changing, for—" She struggled to find words. "For learning to see you as a person instead of just an employee?" Maya nodded. "I should thank you," he said. "You taught me something I should have learned long ago, that how we treat people says everything about who we are, and nothing about who they are." 6 months ago, Maya had been a struggling housekeeper with hidden dreams. Tonight, she was a professional musician with a bright future ahead of her. But more than that, she had learned that sometimes the most unexpected circumstances can lead to the most important changes. As she looked around the reception at all the people celebrating her success, Maya realized that the night Mr. Riverside had tried to humiliate her had actually been the night that saved both of their lives. His cruelty had backfired in the most beautiful way possible, revealing her talent to people who could help her while forcing him to confront the ugliness in his own heart. Sometimes, Maya thought the most beautiful music comes from the most unlikely places. And sometimes, the people who hurt us the most end up teaching us the most important lessons about forgiveness, growth, and the power of second chances.